All right. Well, I am here with Justin Siken, founder of the HigherGov platform, and he is going to take us through the platform to show you some easy ways how you can forecast for opportunities coming down the pipeline. So, Justin, I'm going to turn it over to you, and maybe you could just kind of take us through maybe a hypothetical scenario of a company that may be doing market research to identify perhaps things that have happened in the past, and maybe they want to study that acquisition to prepare for it in the future. But I know you've got some cool filters and stuff that you can add just to kind of see some other opportunities and how a person might use the HigherGov platform for forecasting purposes.
Yep, great. Thanks, Carol. So I'm just here. I'm under opportunities contracts. This is our main federal contract opportunity search screen. There's a number of different ways to search here. We'll kind of go from finding near-term opportunities to going further and further out. Sort of the further and further out you go, the more speculative it is in terms of whether something will actually materialize. But as we sort of like to say, by the time it's on SAM, it's too late. A lot of larger established contractors sort of take the approach of if they're seeing something for the first time, when it's showing up on SAM, it's kind of already a lot of times too late because other companies have already been preparing for that for a while, potentially shaping the opportunity. So a lot of folks will look to forecast far out in the future. And so this is, I'll kind of go through a couple different ways that HigherGov sort of enables you to do that relatively quickly. So again, I'm here under opportunities, contracts. If you click around add filters, there's a bunch of different ways to filter. Most common folks are going to use, depending on your business, are going to be keywords, agency, NAICS code, PSE code, place of performance, set aside, value range. Just to keep it simple here, I'll use NAICS as an example here. So I'll put in the NAICS code for general consulting. And you can add as many different NAICS codes in here if you want. So if you have multiple NAICS codes, you can add all those NAICS codes in here. If you want to limit the results here to things that are currently outstanding, basically anything with a deadline in the future, there's another filter in here called add filters called active opportunity. It's going to get through everything with an historical deadline and just focus you on things that are currently outstanding. So here on the opportunities tab, this is going to be things that are anything that sources sought through solicitation. Obviously, things that are sort of in a solicitation stage are, things you would be responding to as sort of a final bid today. Or near to today. Items that have in like a sources sought status, that would be sort of like the I'd say nearest up in terms of where you would be forecasting. So these are things where there is currently a sources sought outstanding where the government is looking for companies to basically provide capability statements or white papers or in general thoughts on their ability to do procurements, which may result in sort of changing how the government ends up procuring something, depending on the types of companies that respond, the products and services that they offer, the various socioeconomic statuses that they have. You can filter specifically for sources sought type items here. If you come here to opportunity type, there's a filter for sources sought. So that will give you things where you're, sort of responding to something where it's not a solicitation at this point, but it is something where, the government's sort of saying, hey, we're planning on procuring this at some point. That final solicitation could come out a week later. It could come out 3 years later. There's kind of a wide range in when a sources sought will become a solicitation if it ever does. But this is sort of, I'd say, the nearest term type forecasting you do would be looking at things where the government already has a sources sought out, which usually means that they're sort of in the process of actively procuring a solicitation or about to start actively preparing a solicitation. So that's here on the opportunities tab, and again, that's just sort of filtering by things that are currently in the sources sought status. I'm gonna take that filter off here. The second tab here is going to be forecasts. So these are going to be opportunities that are in the forecast stage. And so these come from agency forecasts. There's about 50 or 60 different agency forecasts out there. Every agency does this differently. Some agencies like DHS here, which is sort of some of the top results, they have a system they use called the APFS system, where they'll post forecasts of things that they're planning on procuring sort of 6 months to a couple years in advance. They update that pretty much every day. We pull that information in here weekly with sort of their latest forecasts. Other agencies, particularly the DoD, may just kind of put spreadsheets out every once in a while, once or twice a year, in terms of things they're planning on procuring. So these are things where an agency has said, hey, this is something we're planning on procuring. We'll probably put out a solicitation, in the next year or so. So then you can almost think of these as like pre-sources sought. Usually when they first appear here, this is sort of before an agency has gone out and gotten to the sources sought stage. When you click in here to a given, forecast, it's going to have a description, usually an estimated value, a timing, instead of when it's likely to be kind of solicited and awarded. Some information about sort of procurement processes. The big one here is going to be if it's a new requirement or recompete requirement. In other words, there's someone doing this work today and the contract is ending and the government's looking to procure it again, or is this something that is sort of brand new? In general, sort of the brand new things are sometimes the most desirable because things that are recompeting, there's already a company that's doing it, and a lot of times, the incumbent tends to win 80% or so of the time, unless there's some reason why they can't win anymore, which we'll talk a little bit about how to sort of identify those where they can't win anymore. If it is a recompete, let me open up one here that's recompetes. There will typically be a link back here to the contract that's currently going on. So if you want to see the contract that's currently going on and see more information about that, you can do that in here. And then there'll also be contact information in here. So at the forecast stage, the government is not asking for anything. However, many contractors, particularly established ones, will treat agency forecasts as sources sought, even though they're not, and send them, capability statements or thoughts on how they would recommend sort of procuring it. It's just one way of sort of shaping opportunities, again, before other people really kind of know about them. It's just a way to make the ultimate procurement more favorable to you. At the end of the day, if you can make a contracting officer's life easier by giving them away, either through a vehicle or a set aside or just a capability they didn't know existed, they're sort of more likely to incorporate that into the ultimate solicitation, which just makes it easier for you as an applicant to win. So those are the agency forecasts. Again, these are things where an agency has kind of come out and explicitly said, hey, this is something we're planning on procuring over the next year or so. However, agencies do not forecast most things. They forecast many things, but they don't forecast most things. And they tend to forecast services more than they forecast products. They really generally don't do a great job of forecasting products. So another common approach would be to look and say, hey, what are the contracts that are currently going on that had some size and duration to them that makes it look like they are likely to recompete? So if you click here on potential recompete under additional results here, this will basically give you everything that's set to end in the next year that meets whatever your search criteria is here. This is kind of a quick filter to get here. The alternate way to get here is if you come down here to under awards contracts, and then add the filter recompete opportunities, and then whatever other filters you want to add on top of that. That's sort of the other way to get to here. But if you're doing an opportunity search again under additional results here, there's just a shortcut to get there called potential recompete. And so by default, what this filter is doing is it's looking 1 to 12 months ahead and saying, hey, what are some things that, based on the contract duration and size and timing and stuff like that, are likely to recompete over the next year. There are going to be a lot of these, and so you may want to further narrow them down, sort of beyond the filters that you may have used in when you're just searching for contract opportunities. So common filters here are going to be, again, agency, place of performance, potential value, contracting vehicles set aside. There's a lot of different ways here to kind of narrow those down further. So if I, for example, I wanted to limit this to, small business contract or small business set asides, it's like small business here that, brings way down the number of things that are set to come up for recompete.
Quick question for you, Justin. If I wanted to
Yep.
see like a 3-year forecast to really
Yep.
get ahead, how can you maybe set it up to look at that?
Sure. So I would take off this quick filter here, just looks again 1 year ahead. But if you take that off, there's a filter in here called potential date potential end. And this allows you to set, sort of whatever time frame you want. So if I wanted to see what's coming up in calendar 2026, I can come in here and put those dates in here. And here's the things that are ending in calendar 2026 in that NAICS code.
Okay.
And the date potential end is basically the date, if all option years are exercised, that contract would end. So if you want to look 2 years forward or 3 years forward, you can use that date potential end filter to kind of get to those contracts.
Okay. And what would be the best way? Now you kind of got a list of opportunities here. You're taking a look at it. You got it dialed in. So let's just say if this top opportunity right there, that basically integrated management strategies, the awardee on, how would you go about adding that one into a filter or a pursuit so that like if you're having conversations with teaming partners, you can pull it up and say, these are the 3 opportunities that we're tracking. That's looks like it's going to come up for recompete in the next, 2 or 3 years.
Sure. So if you open up the contract here, I mean, first I would sort of take a look at the contract and see if it's something that sort of makes sense, for the business and kind of deeper dive. So we'll have sort of typically the government description here, some general overview information. We'll often add some kind of notes on here about the contract. I mean, for this one, I would note this is an 8A sole source contract, and this is sort of a situation where the government tends to like to keep 8A sole source contracts as 8A sole source contracts. They're also, I can see here there's no subcontractors subs here. There's no subcontractors, at least none disclosed. So this is the type of contract I would say if I was, an 8A company, potentially I would look to reach out to the government on this one to see if they'd be interested in potentially opening this up to other 8As, or reconsidering another 8A for a future sole source. But if I wasn't 8A, I probably would say, this contract would probably be pretty hard to win because it's kind of in the 8A program, and it's kind of hard to get things that are in the 8A program out of the 8A program. So that's the first kind of thing you just want to sort of assess. And then maybe you want to add a filter, to your awards if you're seeing a lot of those and say, hey, I don't want things with that filter. So I come here to set aside and I say, okay, I only want things that are either full and open or like if I'm just general small business, small business here. So I'll just limit those to those things that have like those sorts of set asides. But let's assume here for a second that is, something that is of interest. There's sort of 2 options here. You just want to be able to quickly pull it up. There's a button up here called favorite that you can press. Basically that just marks it as a favorite, and then under add filters here there's a filter called my favorites. This will allow you to kind of quickly pull that up as a favorite in the future. Alternatively, we do have a sort of a pursuit management system in here. So if you want to basically add that to a pipeline, first you'll just need to set up a pipeline. So next to pipelines here in the sidebar, just select add new, give your pipeline a name. So you just call it, pipeline. You can customize the stages. For now, we'll kind of skip over that. But if you want to sort of customize the pipeline to have sort of specific stages, you can do that here. And then just click, save here when you're done. And then you can, come in here and just select the pipeline you want to add it to, recompete pipeline. And it'll basically kind of pre-fill all the information from that pipeline or from that opportunity. In this case, a recompete opportunity into here. And if you click here into pursuits, you'll from here on the pursuit screen, you can see everything that you have in pursuit here. So again, it's kind of up to you if you want to do like very simple, be able to pull it up again. I would just hit that add favorites button here, and you can quickly pull that up with the my favorites filter. Again, alternatively, you can create a pipeline and then add that to the pipeline here. for sort of more advanced tracking. But then you have the pipeline. You have the ability to kind of track stages and P-wins and P-goes, dollar values and dates and all that sort of stuff in here, which gets a bit more complicated, but also a bit more robust in terms of sort of tracking, where you're at with the item that you're working on. I do also want to talk about here when we're talking about recompetes. There's a few like special filters in here. Sorry, here back to the since we're back here under contract awards here. I'm gonna put the recompete filter back on here and take this date potential end filter off. There's a couple special filters in here. The two I'll highlight here are vulnerable 8A, which basically, if you have an 8A certification, what this does is gives you the contracts where the current contractor will basically be out of the 8A program by the time the contract is over. And so, these often are sole source contracts, like the one we were looking at before. So this is an 8A sole source contract. And they're listed here as a vulnerable incumbent, which means, the contractor, graduates from the program March 2024. This contract is over in September. And so, they're not gonna be able to continue doing this work. It's in the sole source, 8A sole source program. It's probably gonna want to go to someone else. You may want to, either talk to the current company about partnering on that if you have an 8A certification, or go to the government and talk to them about potentially taking that work over. In this case, you'll see here in the notes, it has actually not been formally terminated yet. This contract was on the list of DOGE terminated contracts, of which there's not that many. There's about 1,000 out of a couple million. But we happen to land on one here. So this would be something where I would say you don't want to spend time on this because it's probably about to get terminated.
That's very helpful.
It hasn't been formally terminated yet, which is why there's no termination notice listed here. But we did note here that, hey, this is on DOGE's termination list. So it is likely to be terminated, currently held up in court. So it's likely to be terminated at some point here in the near future. Alternatively, looking at another one here, this is another example where the company's kind of, graduated in October 23. This is not over until September, they're not gonna be able to recompete this again as a prime. The other filter in here I'll note is the vulnerable small business. This basically is similar to the 8A filter. We'll combine this with an A small business. Just explicitly put this in small business. These are contracts where the current contractor has basically outgrown the NAICS code in terms of being a small business, or is likely to outgrow the NAICS code as a small business before the contract is over. So basically they can't continue to do this work as a small business. The government likes to keep small business contracts as small business. And so these are likely to go to somebody else. And so, without this filter in here, there's 558 contracts, which can be a lot to go through. The vulnerable small business is kind of one way to find, okay, what are contracts that are maybe have a interesting angle to it, that takes 90% of them out and just focuses on the contracts where that current incumbent is going to have a hard time continuing to do the work, at least as that contract is currently configured. And so often folks will look to partner with the current incumbent, because they will basically be looking for a partner to work with, where usually you would prime it and they would sub to you. That allows them to continue doing some work on that contract, even though they aren't small anymore. It gives you, if you're going after that contract, sort of the prior performance of the incumbent on your team, which puts you in a very good position to win it. So those vulnerable, the vulnerable 8A filter is really only applicable if you have an 8A certification or are pursuing an 8A certification. Vulnerable small business will be relevant to kind of anyone who is a small business, but just sort of a couple ways there of narrowing down, sort of besides like your typical filters here.
That's awesome, man. This is such an amazing tool and such a huge time saver from the process that I've tried to use before and piecing together information from the various websites, usaspending.gov and FPDS and all of these others. You guys have done an amazing job, Justin, and we really appreciate you. Before we go, could you show them where they could find the help articles that you've developed if they're looking for resources to better learn how to use the system?
Sure. Down here at the very bottom in the sidebar, there's documentation that kind of goes through, all the different major kind of use cases in the platform. You can kind of peruse this at your leisure, but this kind of goes through all the different, from finding contract opportunities to finding forecasted opportunities, which is sort of what we went through today, looking at the forecasts and the sources SOTs and the potential recompetes, as well as the vulnerable incumbents that we talked about at the end. Those are all kind of covered in here.
All right, awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much, and thank you for offering an extended trial for the participants in our Procurement Readiness Academy. I'll let you close, but as I do, I would say to the students, jump in here, play around with it, use it, read the articles. The more you use it, the better you'll be able to navigate around in it, and it's a phenomenal tool that I think you're going to love. So, Justin, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.